Caitlin Clark got hit in the throat, and her own coach's response is sparking a firestorm. You need to see this before you make up your mind, because what happened next split the basketball world in half, and even people who've defended this league for years suddenly aren't so sure anymore. Let's start with the play everyone's talking about. The incident. During a Fever game, Alyssa Thomas made contact with Caitlin Clark in the throat/neck area. Watch it back and you'll understand why it went viral instantly. It wasn't a clean basketball play, and a lot of people, fans and analysts alike, felt it looked far more deliberate than incidental. Clark stayed in the game, but the replay spread everywhere within minutes. The league reviewed the play. The verdict: a one-game suspension for Thomas. And almost immediately, that number became its own controversy. Was one game enough for contact to the throat of the league's biggest star? Former players weighed in. Analysts argued about precedent. Fans flooded comment sections comparing it to other suspensions around the league, asking why this felt like a slap on the wrist. But the suspension wasn't even the part that blew this up. It was what came next. The press conference. Stephanie White, Indiana's head coach, stepped up to the podium to address the incident, and the way she opened it is what set off the firestorm. She didn't lead with the hit. She didn't lead with whether the punishment fitted. Instead, her first comments were about the wave of online abuse Alyssa Thomas had received since the play, racist, sexist, homophobic comments directed at her, and she condemned that abuse directly, tying it back to the league's broader message about inclusion and protecting players from that kind of hate. For a lot of people watching, that sequencing was the problem. Not the substance. Plenty of people agree online abuse is a real, ugly issue, but the order. Your franchise player just took a hit to the throat, and the first words out of your mouth are about the player who hit her? The reaction that changed everything. This is where it gets interesting, because the loudest pushback didn't come from some random internet account. It came from Dan Dakich, an Indiana sports radio institution who has covered Indiana basketball for decades. And here's the twist. 2 weeks earlier, Dakich had been defending Stephanie White. Solidly. Consistently. Then this happened and he flipped hard live on air. His argument was blunt. No serious coach in a serious league leads a press conference by defending the opposing player who just hit their own star. He said White should have stood at that podium and said the play deserved more than a one-game suspension, full stop, and left the broader social commentary for another moment. That reversal is arguably the biggest story here. When someone who's been in your corner for years suddenly turns and says, "This doesn't sit right with me," that's not nothing. That's the kind of shift that makes even neutral observers stop and pay attention. Where White stands. To her credit, White didn't walk any of it back afterward. She held her position, that condemning racist and homophobic abuse matters regardless of the basketball play that triggered it, and that the WNBA's identity as a league is built around inclusion just as much as competition. She wasn't apologizing for the framing. She meant it. That's created a real, genuine divide in how people are processing this, not a manufactured one. The two sides of this argument. On one side, Caitlin Clark is 22 years old, a rookie, and she has spent this entire season absorbing harder, more physical treatment than almost any first-year player in league history. People on this side argue her coach's job in that moment was simple: defend your player, push for real accountability, make it clear that kind of contact won't be tolerated. Everything else can wait 30 seconds. On the other side, the online abuse aimed at Thomas after the clip went viral was real and ugly, and somebody in a position of authority calling it out isn't wrong just because of bad timing. This side argues White gets unfairly flattened in a 30-second clip taken out of the context of a much longer press conference. Both things genuinely can be true at once. And that's exactly why this hasn't died down. The bigger picture. This isn't happening in a vacuum either. Clark's rookie season has already been defined by an unusually physical, often controversial style of defense from opposing teams, and a running debate over whether the league office and coaches around the league have responded to it strongly enough. Comparisons are already being drawn to Christy Sides, Indiana's previous coach, who fans remember as someone who was very publicly, very consistently in her players' corner during tough moments, whatever you thought of her X's and O's. Add in that White herself was a Purdue legend and a Miss Basketball honoree in Indiana back in her playing days, someone who lived the experience of being the face of a program under a microscope, and a lot of people expected her, of all coaches, to understand instinctively what that podium moment needed to be. What happens now? The suspension's served. The press conference clip isn't going anywhere. And the question hanging over all of it is whether this becomes a one-week news cycle or something that follows White and this Fever team for the rest of the season. Especially if Clark takes another hard hit before this one's even finished trending. So here's the real question. Did Stephanie White handle that podium moment right? Or did she completely miss the assignment? Let me know exactly where you land in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to stay on top of this as it develops, because trust me, this is not over, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. I've got a lot more coming on this story. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.